On some days, Adam galloped about exploring. His hair was wiry, and when it got sweaty, it hung in his eyes. Adam was cute this way. On one such day, he saw a snake. Adam made the snake's acquaintance by accidentally stepping on his back. He lifted the snake from off the ground and brought him up to his face to see him better. Their eyes locked, and in that very moment the snake concluded that, indeed, Adam was a lummox, and that as king of the earth his reign would very soon end. There was a new sheriff in town, and it was he. It was no longer the story of Adam, but the story of the snake. He could tell all of this just by simply looking into his idiot eyes. "I have seen you with another like you," he said to Adam, "but instead of the dead snake between the legs, she has chaos there." "That's Eve," said Adam, all animated. "I named her that myself. God made her from out of my rib." He showed the snake the scar on his side. The snake looked at Adam in silence. The idea of Adam the schlemiel, Adam the fool, being God's favorite, was enough to give the snake a migraine. "You aren't at all like I imagined," the snake said. "I thought you'd be closer to the ground, more pliant, greener. I tried to explain to God that to make you balanced up on your hind legs was architecturally unsound. I don't know why I bother." Adam sat and listened wide-eyed. Eve hadn't the patience to sit and chat like this, so when the snake suggested they get into the habit of meeting every once in a while to talk, Adam was very excited to do so. As they lazed on their backs, staring up at the sky, the snake would brag about how he was older than the whole world, and that he used to pal around with God in the dark, back before creation. He said that in the darkness it was a truer, freer time, that in the darkness was the good old days. He told Adam that back in the very beginning he had all kinds of thoughts on how to make the Garden of Eden a better place, but that God was just too stubborn to listen to reason. "Make the earth out of sugar," I told him. "Instead of stingers, give bees lips they can kiss you with." The snake had opinions about everything. Often he complained about the other animals. "The hyenas stole my pecans," the snake said. "The squirrels don't respect me. A zebra tried to kill me." Adam didn't always agree with the snake. In fact, a lot of what the snake said went straight over his head. But there was still something about him that made him get into a very particular mood. He made the world feel bigger. Sometimes when Adam was with Eve, sitting there in icy silence, he would think to himself, "I sure could go for a good dose of snake." Adam really loosened up with him, which made it all the more sad to watch the snake's duplicity. You would think that after all the time they spent together, the snake would find it within himself to start liking Adam just a little bit, but instead, he only grew to hate him more. He took to comforting himself with thoughts of Adam's wife, Eve. From what he heard from Adam, she was, as well as being hot, very smart. Often he would imagine running into her and the instant synergy they would have. "Adam neglected to tell me how leggy you are," he would say, wrapping around her calf. The snake had no idea what he looked like. He was hairless, buck-toothed, 4 inches tall, and he spoke with a lisp. Adam had the IQ of a coconut husk, but he was still human. The snake in his arrogance was unable to grasp this, and so he daydreamed. "Sometimes I'd think you were watching me," the snake imagined saying to Eve, "because I felt like there were ribbons wrapped around me. I would turn around to catch you sneaking a peek from behind a tree, but all I'd see were the hedgehogs which mocked me." On Eve's very first day, Adam had explained to her the rules of the garden just the way God had explained them to him. He had lifted his head up and had made his back stiff. He had spoken the way a radio broadcaster from the 1940s would. Another kind of woman, someone softer than Eve, might have found this charming. He explained that, except for the tree of knowledge, every tree in the garden was theirs to eat from. "I am a fan of the pear," Adam said. "It is not unlike an apple whose head craves God." "Tell me more about this tree of knowledge," said Eve. She enjoyed the sound of it, the tree of knowledge. It sounded very poetic. "There's not much to tell," said Adam. "If we eat from it, we will die." From then on, Eve talked about the tree of knowledge all the time. It was tree of knowledge this and tree of knowledge that. It's like it wasn't even a tree at all, but a movie star. Sometimes she would just stand by the tree and stare at it. It was on such an occasion that she met the snake. When Eve first caught sight of him, she brought her hand to her mouth and gasped. She had seen some repulsive animals in her day, a booby that percolated her vomit to just beneath her tonsils, a dingo that instilled in her a sublime sense of nature's cruelty, and a death watch beetle that filled her with existential dread. But still, there was something about the snake that made her realize in a flash that the world was anywhere from 60 to 80% oilier than she would have ever imagined. "Hi," said the snake. "In the mood for some fruit of knowledge? It's fruity." "We were told not to eat from that tree or else we would die," said Eve. "Die? What an ignorant thing to say," said the snake, all chewing on a blade of grass in the side of his mouth. "If there is an escape hatch from paradise, then it's not really paradise, is it?" The snake made interesting points, and that appealed to Eve. He could see he was making an impression. "All I'm saying is to give it a try. Many things will be made immediately clear to you once you partake. I can talk about it all day and you still won't get it. You have a right to at least try it, right? I'm not saying go out and eat an entire fruit. Have a nibble. A nibble isn't really eating, is it?" Eve found arguing semantics exhilarating. She looked at the tree. The way the sun shined through its leaves was beautiful. Everything seemed to point to nibble the fruit. Then the snake said, "Think about it. Does God want companions who can think for themselves, or does he want lackeys and yes men? Wouldn't God want a few surprises? God's telling you not to eat the fruit was just a test to see if you could think for yourselves, to see if you could exist as equals to God. The day you taste the fruit is the day God will no longer be lonely. At least give it a lick." Eve looked at the fruit. Then she looked at the snake. Then, slowly, she parted her lips and pushed out her tongue, all wet and warm and uncertain. She ran its tip along the smooth flesh of the fruit. The snake smiled. "Has anyone died?" he asked. "Now take a tiny little nibble, just a speck, just to see." The fruit was squishy and tart. She smushed it around in her mouth. She squinted her eyes. It was a bit like trying on new glasses. It was a bit like enamel nitrate popper. It was a bit like a big wet kiss on the lips right at first when you weren't sure if you wanted to be kissed or not. She felt 1,000 little feet kicking at her uterus. The idea of her own nudity, as well as Adam's, had always felt more like a Nordic co-ed health spa thing. Now, with the fruit of knowledge, it felt more like a Rio de Janeiro carnival thing. Her breasts felt like water balloons filled with blueberry jam and birds. Her nipples were like lit matchsticks. Her thighs, the way they swished against each other, were like scissors cutting through velour. With her lips still glistening in Tree of Knowledge fruit juice, she ran off to find Adam. The snake watched her as he chewed on his slimy blade of grass, and as she receded into the distance, he thought something along the lines of, "Now that's what I'm talking about." "Kiss me, Adam," said Eve. "Taste my lips." Adam, like any lummox truly worth his salt, could smell the minutest trace of knowledge coming his way, and thus he knew how to avoid it like the plague. But yet there was also this. Eve never sought him out in the middle of the day before just to kiss him. It felt like a very lucky thing. When he took her in his arms, he told her that he loved her with his whole entire heart. He closed his eyes tightly and brought his lips to hers. Then he squinted. Then it started to rain, and Eve began to cry.
You're listening to WireTap with Jonathan Goldstein on CBC Radio 1 and Sirius Satellite Radio 137.